Shifting our focus back in time by a couple of decades, let's examine the 1965 Lincoln cent, a coin that quietly marked a pivotal moment in U.S. minting history and now commands the attention of seasoned collectors. Unlike the everyday pennies that jingled in kitchen jars, some 1965 cents feature oddities that only the most observant eyes catch. The way these rare varieties slipped into circulation reveals a fascinating blend of changing metal compositions, evolving mint protocols, and little misspoken instructions on the production floor. In early 1965, the U.S. Mint was grappling with a soaring copper shortage. Rising metal prices threatened to push the face value of a cent past its bullion cost, prompting the Department of the Treasury to explore alternative materials. Volatile commodity markets meant that scrap copper in the Dayton recycling yards was suddenly worth more than the pennies crowding tills across the country. Faced with the specter of pennies melting for profit, mint officials made the bold decision to shift from a nearly pure copper planchet to a copper-clad zinc core, 95% zinc inside, enveloped by a thin 5% copper shell. This transition not only changed the way pennies looked on the outside but opened the door to striking errors that had never occurred at such scale. Once the first copper-clad zinc planchets arrived at Philadelphia and Denver in mid-1965, press operators needed time to adjust. The new core metal reacted differently under pressure. Zinc compressed more easily, while the copper layer tended to separate if the press speed or die lubrication wasn't perfect. In those early weeks, coins emerged with lamination errors, flaky patches where the copper cladding peeled away, revealing a bright silvery zinc underbelly. While most lamination errors were caught and melted down, a modest handful escaped quality control and circulated to unsuspecting hands. Collectors hunting for 1965 lamination errors quickly learned what to look for: mismatched coloration, blotchy silver-gray spots, and areas where the rim seemed jagged or flaky. Under 5 times magnification, you can see the copper layer lifting like an old poster peels from a wall. These aren't subtle anomalies. Some examples look like geological cross-sections, with curled-up copper edges that shimmer under light. Yet because lamination errors often compromise the coin's structural integrity, many surviving examples show edge weakness or corrosion in the exposed zinc, which impacts grading and value. Beyond lamination, a softer press setting in one Denver die produced the most famous 1965 double die variety. On those coins, the date, the word Liberty, and even Lincoln's jawline spring to life with mirrored ghost images, like a double-exposure photograph. This error occurred because the die received 2 separate hub impressions that weren't perfectly aligned. The double date on a clear 1965 D double die brings a thrill to collectors' hearts. What began as a momentary misregistration at the hubbing press has become one of the era's most sought-after treasures. It's vital to note that not every slightly fuzzy date counts as a true double die. Many weakly struck or worn coins can mimic doubling, so authentication demands a trained eye. Genuine 1965 D double dies show a distinct secondary strike projection that sits about a hair's breadth away from the primary image, with crisp separation and no blending. Common indicators include a shadowed loop in the 6 of the date or a second leg on the Y of Liberty. Sliding seamlessly from mid-century surprises to a coin minted in the digital dawn of the late 1990s, our final spotlight shines on the 1997 Lincoln cent, a piece so familiar that most hands have held it countless times, yet bursting with hidden twists for collectors who know exactly where to look. As the United States navigated an era defined by burgeoning technology, soaring stock markets, and dramatic shifts in everyday life, the humble penny remained a steadfast emblem of commerce. Yet even such a routine circulation piece couldn't escape the occasional misstep, nor the curious stories that would make its way into numismatic lore decades later. Buckle up, because this unassuming copper-zinc blend has more depth than its thin ring suggests. In 1997, pennies were composed of a 97.5% zinc core clad in 2.5% copper, a switch made 15 years earlier to curb rising metal costs. Production numbers that year soared to fulfill the insatiable demand of vending machines, transit systems, and cash transactions. Lincoln's portrait by Brenner still graced the obverse, while the reverse featured the shield design introduced just 4 years prior, symbolizing unity with its crossbar and vertical stripes. To ordinary eyes, these pennies looked identical to those struck yesterday. Yet behind the scenes, the Philadelphia and Denver mints pressed out billions of these little discs, each one the product of high-speed machinery where minute misalignments, die clogs, and striking pressure fluctuations could, and did, produce collectible anomalies. Spotting a rare 1997 penny often starts with the mint mark. At Denver, look for the familiar D beneath the date. In Philadelphia, a lack of mint mark denotes pre-production, though collectors sometimes colloquially prefix an S when referring to proofs. One of the most alluring varieties is the 1997 double die obverse, most commonly at Philadelphia. Here, the date and the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" exhibit ghost-like doubling, subtle, but unmistakable once you know what to search for. Unlike earlier centuries, these double dies are often fainter, requiring a sharp loop and bright illumination. Trace the contour of Lincoln's jawline or the serifs of the T in trust, and you may catch the faint echo of a second strike. That ghost image, almost imperceptible to the casual holder, can vault an otherwise ordinary penny into premium territory. Complementing this intrigue are the occasional off-center strikes and clipped planchets. With machines spinning at breakneck speeds, planchets occasionally fed incorrectly or shifted ever so slightly before striking. An off-center 1997 penny might display as little as 2% displacement, barely noticeable without close inspection, or as dramatic as 40%, where Lincoln's profile competes for space with blank metal. Clipped planchets, on the other hand, occur when a new blank is cut from a strip that already bears a die indentation from the previous strike. Kicking off our final chapter, the 1988 Lincoln cent brings a different flavor to the one-penny story. By this point, the mint had fine-tuned its processes, and the zinc-plated design had settled comfortably into place. Yet errors and curious variations still slipped through machines humming with precision. Collectors who sift through pocket change or attend brisk trade nights know that even small shifts in planchet thickness, striking pressure, or die wear can spark keen interest. The 1988 penny may look familiar at first glance, but a closer inspection reveals a treasure trove of quirks waiting to be uncovered. In early 1988, the U.S. economy crept toward the final decade of the Reagan era. Copper prices had stabilized compared to the crisis of 1982, so the mint stuck with the copper-plated zinc core introduced years earlier. That consistency meant collectors' attention turned away from composition and back to striking quality and mint-mark distinctions. Philadelphia and Denver each stamped millions of pennies that year, yet slight differences in press speed and planchet sourcing created subtle tonal shifts. Those differences, though nearly invisible to casual viewers, fuel collector debates over which mint's output captures a richer luster or holds up longer against circulation wear. On the Philadelphia side, the absence of a mint mark often leads collectors to assume uniformity. However, diligent hobbyists spot faint textural contrasts in the field surrounding Lincoln's bust. Philadelphia planchets in '88 sometimes show smoother fields with softer contact marks, ideal for cameo-style finishes if struck firmly. In pristine uncirculated grades, a full red, deeply frosted cameo 1988 p penny can approach $5 to $8 when slabbed with a cameo designation. That premium reflects both demand for high-contrast proof-like business strikes and the dwindling population of flawless survivors after decades of everyday handling. Denver's D mint mark might look like a mere speck, but it can make a substantial difference in price. In uncirculated MS64RD, full red, condition, a 1988 D can trade between $8 and $12, edging past its Philadelphia counterpart. Move up to MS66RD and collectors have seen prices climb into the $30 range on online auction platforms. Those top grades are rare, given how easily the thin copper plating scuffs under normal contact. A sharp strike, perfect rim definition, and uniform red color become a trifecta that draws eyes and bids at coin shows nationwide. Beyond mint marks, the most sought-after anomalies of 1988 center around striking errors. One of the year's star attractions is the double rim error, where insufficient blank spacing or misalignment causes a faint doubling of the coin's rim on one side. That ghostly outline hugs the circumference like a shadow and, when paired with a clear main rim, turns a common penny into a conversation piece. Even in lower grades, such pieces often fetch $3 to $5, double or triple face value, while uncirculated examples with crisp doubling have crossed $25 in specialty auctions. Perhaps the most dramatic variations come from planchet defects. Though the mint's quality control nipped most in-house flaws in 1988, a few trial planchets and off-center strikes slipped past inspectors. Collectors prize pennies with off-center images, where Lincoln's bust drifts toward the rim by 2 to 4 mm. Sub-4 mm off-centers trade for modest premiums, $2 to $4 in circulated grades, while more extreme misalignments, nearing 6 mm or more, can approach $50 if the date remains fully visible. The width of that misstrike area dictates value, and skilled graders ensure that each percentage of missing image correlates with a tiered price guide. Die cracks continue to fascinate collectors through 1988. Tiny fissures can spiderweb around Lincoln's head or smack across the reverse wheat stalks, creating patterns as unique as fingerprints. A well-defined die crack across the date or through the mint mark often commands $10 to $15 in mid-grade condition. When such a crack survives into high mint states, with full red surfaces and minimal contact marks, the value can surge beyond $40, especially if the die break forms a recognizable shape, like a letter or map outline, that sparks a memorable nickname among hobby forums. A less obvious but equally collectible variety from 1988 is the struck through grease error. In this scenario, tiny bits of lubricant or debris on the die surface block the metal flow, leaving smooth, shiny spots without the characteristic frosted relief. These blank patches, when they appear on Lincoln's coat or the date, stand out like shiny islands on a matte sea. Tough to spot without magnification, they nevertheless bring moderate premiums, $6 to $10 in grades above EF45, and up to $30 if the specimen shows a large, clean struck-through area coupled with strong details. Collecting the 1988 cent also involves tracking subtle hub doubling, less dramatic than full doubled dies but visible on letters like "NI," "In God We Trust." Low-grade examples might show ghost-like echoes of the original hub impression, while top-grade coins can display bold doubling that sharply outlines the legend. These doubled hub varieties often fall into the $8 to $15 range when graded MS65 or higher, drawing bidders who specialize in error and variety collecting. That niche camaraderie sustains demand, propelling even mid-grade finds into the hobbyist spotlight. Market records for 1988 pennies reveal steady but unspectacular growth, reflecting both the coin's abundance and the sustained interest in minor errors. Auction archives show that average prices for MS64RD 1988D coins have climbed from about $12 in 2010 to nearer $20 today, an uptick driven by a shrinking population of flawless survivors and renewed attention from younger collectors seeking affordable entry points. Conversely, MS63 examples remain anchored around $6 to $8, offering value hunters a way to own top-graded copper-plated cents without breaking the bank. Condition variations paint a vivid portrait of this penny's value spectrum. A heavily circulated 1988 Lincoln cent, worn smooth around Lincoln's cheek and with flattened wheat on the reverse, typically trades at only a modest premium, around 50 cents to $1 over face value. In EF40 to VF30, slight luster remnants can nudge it to $2 or $3. Collectors gravitate toward coins with red remnants, where touches of original copper color peek through brown and gray patinas. Those red-brown, RB, specimens in EF40 can command $5 to $7 if the remaining red is both eye-appealing and evenly distributed. As with earlier years, mint packaging and casual discoveries shape the lore of 1988 pennies. One noteworthy tale involves a coin dealer who acquired a box of mixed cent rolls from a retiring bank teller. Hidden among thousands of standard zinc cent rolls was a single business strike proof-like specimen, spotted by its mirror-like fields and frosted devices. Graded PR67 Cameo by a leading service, it's sold privately for $200, proof the year's unique strikes can generate excitement when they surface in unlikely places. Our journey through three distinct Lincoln Cent eras, 1982's metal turmoil, 1978's die dramas, and 1988's refined but still error-prone output, reveals a surprising depth in what many dismiss as everyday pocket change. For seasoned collectors and casual adventurers alike, these pennies offer keys to America's minting saga, from commodity economics to mechanical mishaps. They remind us that the smallest denomination can carry the biggest stories. With the secrets of the 1975 cent revealed, our gaze now turns to 1979, a year that brought subtle design tweaks, record-setting double dies, and a pair of date varieties that send even seasoned collectors back to their albums. The 1979 Lincoln Cent might look ordinary at first glance, with its familiar memorial reverse and coppery sheen, but beneath the surface lies a treasure trove of anomalies waiting to be uncovered. Listen closely, and you'll hear the hum of minting presses echoing stories of die rotations, repunched mint marks, and planchet oddities that can transform a handful of pennies into a prized discovery. In 1979, the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced over 8.9 billion cents combined, yet only a fraction bear the hallmarks of true rarity. That year saw the introduction of small and large date varieties at Philadelphia, giving birth to two distinct Lincoln obverses. The large date version exhibits bold, full-bodied numerals in the date, while the small date shows narrower digits sitting slightly lower on Lincoln's shoulder. Though subtle, that difference turns a run-of-the-mill penny into a specialist's quest. Large date business strikes typically outnumber small date, making the latter more elusive in higher grades. A small date MS-65 might fetch $20 to $30, whereas the large date at the same grade might trade in the $8 to $12 range. Yet the real headline came from Philadelphia's double die obverse, DDO, specimens. Unlike the 1972 double dies that stunned the hobby a decade earlier, the 1979 DDO variety whispers its doubling along the words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty," plus faint doubling on the date. Discoveries of sharply struck, well-centered DDO examples sent shockwaves through coin shows. Certified pieces in the MS-63, MS-64 range now regularly sell for $400 to $600, while finer grades, MS-65 and above, can soar past $1,200. Auction records show a pristine MS-66 DDO achieving over $2,500 in late 2023, proof that the magic of die doubling endures. At Denver, the mint mark played its own game of hide-and-seek. A handful of 1979 D cents exhibit repunched mint marks, where the original D sits slightly askew beneath a second punch. Collectors label these varieties DR1 through DR4, depending on the direction and depth of the repunch. In circulated grades, a DR1 might bring $25 to $40, but mint state survivors can command $150 to $250. The most dramatic repunches, with clear ghostly echoes of the first mint mark, have fetched upwards of $500 when presented in a brilliant MS-66 holder. Off-center strikes and clipped planchets continued to thrill error enthusiasts in 1979. Off-centers under 5% partiality often remain hidden in pocket change, but more dramatic misalignments, where 30% or more of Lincoln's visage vanishes, can command several $100s. Clipped planchets, with their smooth, crescent-shaped missing edges, range from $50 for minor shallow clips to over $300 for deep, broad crescent errors. Compound errors, combining both misalignment and clipping, ascend even higher, as the eye is drawn to their rare double spectacle. Planchet composition remained the classic 95% copper, 5% zinc, but misstrikes on foreign planchets still surface periodically. The thrilling discovery of a Lincoln image stamped onto a slightly lighter zinc planchet or vice versa carries a premium. A 1979 penny on a dime-size planchet might draw $800 to $1,200, while rarer planchets, like those intended for tokens, can spike into four-figure territory, especially in pristine, uncleaned condition. Beyond error varieties, face value collectors prize full bands on the memorial reverse. This FB designation refers to fully struck horizontal lines on the dome of the Lincoln Memorial. In circulated grades, FB cents might yield $1 or $2, but crisp MS-65 FB 1979 D coins can sell for $15 to $20, and MS-67 FB examples are highly coveted, routinely commanding $150 to $200. A singular MS-67 Plus specimen once realized $456 in 2022, underscoring how a perfectly struck reverse can elevate value. Market values for common date, unblemished 1979 cents remain modest. Circulated pieces trade at face value, while MS-63 coins rise to around $1 to $2. MS-64 and MS-65 grades gently climb, reaching $4 to $8 and $10 to $15, respectively. Crossing into MS-66 territory signals true scarcity. Expect prices of $25 to $35 for Philadelphia and $20 to $30 for Denver. Bit by bit, every incremental grade pushes a penny further from pocket change toward prized cabinet piece. Collectors treasure the human narratives behind these cents almost as much as the coins themselves. At a Midwestern coin show in 2021, a retiree shared how his granddaughter spotted a small. Turning the clock back to 1962, another Lincoln cent quietly slipped into circulation bearing subtle quirks that only the most discerning collectors would ever spot. While most eyes skimmed over the familiar profile of America's 16th president, a tiny fraction of these pennies carried stories of die clashes, doubled elements, and planchet flaws that have since turned ordinary change into prized keepsakes. By exploring the nuances of the 1962 Lincoln cent, you'll uncover a chapter of numismatic history marked by meticulous mint practices, unexpected errors, and a market that has steadily rewarded those who know exactly where to look. In 1962, the demand for everyday coinage remained strong as the U.S. economy hummed along, and the Mint's Philadelphia and Denver facilities struck billions of cents without fanfare. Abraham Lincoln's bust, originally designed by Victor David Brenner almost half a century earlier, still graced the obverse, accompanied by the now familiar, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "the Year." The reverse featured wheat ears flanking the denomination, a design that would persist until 1958, though some experimental struck items lingered in early '62 production. At face value, these pennies served commerce, but they also carried potential anomalies, tiny quirks born of high-speed presses, die wear, and human oversight. One of the most captivating varieties among 1962 cents is the double die obverse from the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike the bolder double dies of the 1950s or the dramatic hubbing errors in later decades, the 1962 double die often manifests as a subtle doubling in the date and lettering. Under direct light, the 1 in 1962 can show a faint secondary line just to its right, and the letters in God We Trust, may reveal a whisper of duplication. This faintness is a double-edged sword. While it lends scarcity to coins with clear doubling, it also demands a practiced eye to confirm authenticity and rule out false positives caused by die deterioration or post-mint damage. Identifying a genuine 1962 double die requires more than casual inspection. Collectors often rely on a 5 times to 10 times loop, angled lighting, and reference photographs. Key telltale signs include a crisp, unblended secondary image that maintains consistent spacing from the primary design, as opposed to the smudged or erratic impressions seen on weakly struck or damaged coins. In some exceptional specimens, doubling extends across Lincoln's cheek or the rim above his head, offering a more dramatic example that jumps out even to the unaided eye. Yet among the tens of millions of Philadelphia cents struck that year, only a few dozen double dies have been slab certified in uncirculated grades, making each authenticated piece a notable find. If double dies represent one corner of the 1962 era landscape, die clashes occupy another. Die clashes occur when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring faint elements of one design onto the other. On some 1962 cents, you might glimpse an outline of the wheat ears softly etched above Lincoln's shoulder or the faint shadow of Lincoln's profile mirrored in the reverse fields, ghostly afterimages that reveal a momentary synchronization mishap on the press. While die clashes are not exclusive to 1962, the relative scarcity of well-preserved clash specimens makes them highly desirable, particularly when the transferred details are crisp enough to display recognizable features rather than vague smudges. Beyond doubling and clashes, planchet flaws also turn heads. The circulating planchets of 1962 were part of a robust supply drawn from blister-packed coils and loose accumulations. Occasionally, small inclusions of foreign metal or obtrusive grease spots produced planchet blemishes or struck-through grease errors. These manifest as dark, matte patches where the striking metal failed to bond correctly, leaving faint silhouettes or streaks across Lincoln's profile. Collectors prize these anomalies not only for their rarity but for the insight they provide into the mint's production environment, where human error and mechanical imperfections briefly intersected before being corrected. Given the wide range of possible errors, assembling a focused collection of 1962 cents can feel like detective work. Some enthusiasts concentrate solely on double dies, securing both the more common faint varieties and relentlessly hunting for any bold specimens. Others embrace a broader approach, soliciting coins with clash marks, broad strikes, lamination flaws, and planchet laminations in a dedicated folder or specialized album. Auction catalogs often list multiple error types together, offering keen-eyed bidders the chance to acquire a suite of irregularities from a single estate find or advanced consignor. Turning to market value, the 1962 double die obverse in circulated grades can command anywhere from $200 for a modest VF20 piece up to $600 or more for a negative $55 example with distinct, evenly struck doubling. As specimens improve, but for a collector who knows where to look, it's a gateway into stories of manufacturing quirks, shifting metal markets, and the thrill of unearthing something unexpected. When one of these rare 1989 Lincoln cents surfaces at an auction, hushed excitement ripples through the room, and rightfully so. It's hard not to feel a surge of excitement when you lift that smooth edge, spot the gleam in the fields, and realize this penny carries a secret that most chasers will never uncover. As we explore what makes the 1989 Lincoln cent so captivating, keep in mind that each detail, down to the tiniest die clash or doubled ear, can make all the difference between a face-value curiosity and a six-figure sensation. The story begins in Philadelphia in 1989, where the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents as Abraham Lincoln marked another year on the obverse. That year, demand for copper surged globally, and the Mint was racing to strike enough coins to satisfy commerce and collectors alike. Running at high speed, some dies developed faint cracks, leading to the so-called cracked die varieties. Those cracks show up as fine spiderweb lines across Lincoln's bust or the date, and coins bearing them were few enough to slip by quality control. Today, any Lincoln cent from 1989 exhibiting a clear web of die cracks becomes a prized find rather than just pocket change. Collectors often trace their passion back to moments of discovery, and the 1989 cracked die pennies offer precisely that, an unexpected treasure hiding in plain sight. When these anomalies first appeared in mail and handling, they struck fear into the Mint's quality assurance team. Yet, the very rarity of those coins, born from a momentary breakdown in a high-volume operation, is what elevates them now. Philadelphia's Mint didn't release a special stamp or mark for these, they simply slipped into circulation, waiting for eagle-eyed enthusiasts to spot the difference. Key identifiers are your best friend when verifying a 1989 secret die crack variety. Look closely at the reverse, just above the date, for a fine hairline that branches like a tree limb. On some coins, the crack might also reach Lincoln's eye or cheek on the obverse, giving his visage an almost ghostly web overlay. Another favorite among specialists is the double die variety, where elements like the word liberty or the motto, "In God We Trust," appear faintly shifted. That doubling manifests as a ghost image just off to the side, visible under 10x magnification. Without a loupe, these subtleties will slip past even experienced collectors, so a reliable magnifier or digital microscope is practically mandatory for authentication. As far as rarity goes, these die cracks and doublings appear on only a handful of the tens of millions of cents minted in Philadelphia that year. The scarcity is subtle yet very